Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today, it's been a minute since I had a fellow speech therapist on the podcast. Elizabeth Sautter is here. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm happy to have you. We are going to talk all about big emotions today and not just for littles. So we will tease that. But before we do, tell the good people something about yourself and what you do.
Well, like you mentioned, I'm a fellow speech pathologist. I specialize in social emotional learning and executive functioning has been my jam for many, many years. And I used to have a center and I took most of my work online. So I have a community supporting parents of neurodivergent kids. I too am a mom of two amazing neurodivergent boys. And I'm dyslexic myself. So yes, neurodivergent myself. So it's a life endeavor, not just a work, living it to give it.
And you have all kinds of goodies, which we're going to get to at the end in terms of like community and projects. And like, you've got a lot of stuff going on and it's so fun.
It's so fun.
Um, it's really good. But let's dive right in to ABCs of big emotions, because you have a really cool framework here that is both kind of conceptual and then very practical. And that is what I love. So walk us through, how do we deal with big emotions? What's happening? What do people need to know?
Yes. So we talk a lot about how, in my work about how to build skills outside of these challenging moments, like sprinkling into daily life. But parents constantly come back and say, and educators too, what do we do in those challenging moments? How do we handle when the big emotions arise? Because they will. I mean, that's just life, and we all have emotions, and it's not something to be scared of. It's a stress response, and it's data. And so thinking about like data, then the first step is to have a mindset shift about what you see. So that's the A, and it's assess. So it's basically just data. Get curious. What is happening in the situation? It's that tip of the iceberg moment, what you see on the outside. There's much more going on underneath, but behavior is communicating something. So it's that time to then be able to get curious. And that's the tool. So the A is just realizing that it's something to get curious about and assess the situation, or you could say ask as well. And then the tool to remind us is to pause and be curious.
Pause. Why? How? Why? How? Can we pause? Why? How?
Yeah, and that's the challenge. That's really, really a hard thing to do. And that's why we talk a lot about taking care of ourselves, as self-care is not just, it's not selfish, it's essential. Because if we don't have water in our own pitchers, then we can't pour to others. And if somebody around us is having a big emotion, then it is going to, it's just, that's science. Mirror neurons, we're going to be affected by others around us. And so the energy is contagious. But when we have that mindset and we can separate ourselves from the situation or the emotions of someone else and have that curious mindset, a child is not giving us a hard time, they're having a hard time. Maybe you've heard that before. And so that's when we can have that mindset of just taking the pause, not taking it on, and be able to ask ourselves what's really going on and why they are having a hard time and what they might need in that moment. But first, it's being able to look below the waterline and get curious about what might be happening here. And you can't do that unless you're in a regulated state yourself. And that's what takes time outside of the heated moment, is to work on that.
Right. Yeah. And so this is really interesting, right? Because we're talking about kind of this. I was just thinking about it like as a red circle, like when we're in the red circle of emotion, what we get to bring to bear is all of the self-care, all of the self-compassion, all of the activities that bring us joy and fill our cups. We get to bring those threads into that circle. And that's, I mean, listen, this is a lifelong task. Just for anybody who's listening, who's like, am I going to learn how to do this today? No, you're going to learn some of the things that you're going to be able to do some of the time. But I will say, if you're listening to this thinking, I couldn't possibly pause for 1 to 3 seconds or longer before I give a response to my child who's melting down about something, I really want you to question that assumption,
Hmm.
because you've been doing it one way. I'm sure parents who come to you have been doing it a certain way.
Yeah.
And then what happens when you tell them, like, have you ever had people look at you cross-eyed and be like, what do you mean pause?
Yeah, exactly. What do you mean? I can't pause. And it really is like, and this is why it becomes a practice. And this is why, like, outside of these heated moments, and I learned this the hard way with two boys with hyperactivity, ADHD, and big emotions. And I poured oil on the water, on the fire many, many times. And so this isn't just, this is me living it as well. But I found that when I was able to pause, like little things, and this is where I practiced and learned many, many years ago of how to practice mindfulness outside of these heated situations, I was able to over time build that muscle of being able to hear the reaction happening and feel my feet on the ground before I go in. Or even as I'm walking, I'm feeling my feet on the ground. Or like, noticing the handle as I'm opening the door. Even things like, and energetically, just like opening my heart and just pausing to do that, like even just a postural change. Those are just the little micro things that we can do to take the pause so that we can assess and get curious.
That's so interesting because as you were talking, I could kind of see all of that. And all of those things are practices. When people say get back in your body,
Hmm.
right? Get in the present moment. Those are, by the way, those mean the same thing, kind of. Um, yeah, a
Yeah.
mindful
So when you say get
pause.
back in your body, feel your feet, notice something you see,
Yeah.
put your hand on the knob, open your chest so that you can have that heart opening feeling. And again, this is not going to come instinctually when you're in that heated moment. That's why the practice is outside of the heated moment to then be able to do that when you're in the moment.
I sometimes say this to my groups, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. Because people come sometimes and they say, the strategy didn't work. Feeling my feet on the floor didn't work. And I
Yeah.
say, what do you mean? And they said, well, my kid didn't stop screaming.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
say, okay, but did you do the thing where you felt your feet on the floor? And they said, yes. And I said, well, the strategy worked.
Yeah. 100%. Because, what we're trying to get here, it's a mindset shift that we're doing with with the assess of the ABCs, because it's really, we're just trying to get us as adults and parents and educators to realize that it's a stress response that's happening. It's not a personal situation. It's not something that we need to fix. Emotions come and go like clouds or like waves. And so, just like a lifeguard, we wouldn't go in there and just like, we have to like calm our body first. We're not going to go in there tense if we're going to be supporting somebody else and being that life support in that situation. And it's not about the behavior, the emotions going away. It's about us being able to have a different way of looking at it. So then we can come in with a different way of handling it and building lifelong skills too, because we're modeling this as well.
I haven't heard the lifeguard analogy, and I love it, actually.
I talk
You,
about riding the waves all the time, and there's so many analogies that you can say in terms of the tip of the iceberg and like riding the waves and not let them take you under. And also too, like, you're not going to throw your kid in the water as they're learning skills to swim. We have to like, it's a tip, watching first, putting your toe in. There's so many analogies that you can do with the water.
yeah, but it's just the one that stuck out to me is like a person who's drowning is acting really erratically and
Yeah,
is having very big emotions, right? They're not acting
scary.
in their right mind. It's scary, and they're scared. And similarly, children who are having big emotions are also not in their right mind, acting erratically. But we don't leave a drowning person in the water saying they're acting crazy, therefore I'm not going to help them.
Yeah, or stop drowning right now. It's yeah, you're not going to blame them and shame them for drowning. We have to have ourselves be calm and have the tools that we need.
Right.
And that's why all the training comes from being a lifeguard, right? So it's like outside of the moment, the lifeguard needs to have all this training so that in that moment they can be the buoyant and supportive facilitator to help the person back to safety. And
Right.
that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create safety here in
Ooh.
ourselves first so that then we can share that because we don't want to escalate a situation. We want to regulate a situation. So,
I'm going to pause here for just a second because if you're listening to this conversation and you just thought to yourself, the world isn't safe, I'm not safe, I can't give safety to someone else, that's okay.
it is.
This conversation is your next step. Your first step is to create that safety with a coach, with a therapist, with a friend, for yourself. If you're an adult listening to this podcast, you absolutely can create safety for yourself. And it might take some doing. So just know that this is the 200 level class and you might need to be in the 100 level class, and that's okay.
And that's why we do this parent coaching. I mean, we just had a coaching call in our community this morning, and Lauren, she's a holistic speech pathologist. We start out and end with grounding because we talk about nervous system reset for the adult facilitator all the time. It is the foundation. So that is where yeah, if you're not in a place of safety yourself, then that is where, I mean, drop the mic here. We could stop the conversation. That's where we need to be focusing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So A, assess, ask, pause.
Yep.
What's the B?
Pause and get curious is the tool. And then B is balance the brain. So, and that's twofold. So it's in the moment. That's, if you notice your brain is not in a place to be balanced, maybe that's a tap out if there's another adult around that could tap in. But if you can regulate yourself first, and then also think about how you can regulate your child. So the tool for this is that you could take one breath, put your hand on your heart and then on your belly. You want to do it with me?
Okay.
And take one breath for me, one breath for you.
Mhm.
So take one slow breath in, and ground yourself, and then take one slow breath for your child or your teen. And this is where you can slow yourself down. I mean, I feel the energy shift even between us right now. So we know that emotions are strong and it's hard to think when your brain is not regulated. So you're first assessing, getting curious, and then you're working on your own nervous system and figuring out how to support your child's nervous system.
Love it. Oof. Yeah. Like that really, if you're listening to this and you just kind of went loopy, there's a reason for that. It's because this, the energetic shifts that happen are real. They're invisible and they are no less real.
Hmm.
So that's quite interesting. Yeah, because my brain just kind of went, that feels good.
It does. And again, this is not easy to do in the moment, but it can be that way to, again, after you pause to get curious about what's happening. This is also to taking it to that place of getting curious about what's happening with you and your child. And they might need a cheese stick. They might need a drink of water and they might not want to talk. They might need a hug. They might need a little time.
Yeah,
It's different. Every situation and every child is different.
yeah,
So that's when you can just take that deep breath for you. And it's just symbolic. Take a deep breath for you, deep breath for me. What does my brain need? What does my child's brain need? And body too. Obviously, we're talking about nervous systems here.
yeah. What I noticed you didn't say is you didn't ask or indicate that the parent should ask the child to take a deep breath. Why not?
Because the child then they're not in a state of being able to regulate themselves. This is the co-regulation state. And so they can if they're crying or fussing or yelling or shut down, it could be just an add-on to the dysregulation for asking them to do something that they're not ready to do.
Yeah.
And energetically, they can feel you doing it for yourself and for them.
Yeah. Um, Dan Siegel talks about flipped lids. You were talking about
Yes.
mirror neurons, right? Getting your lid back on is
Yeah.
also contagious. So that's where this feeling comes from. Like again, we're still kind of in it. It's so interesting to me. Like we were very high, and now we are much more anchored in
Yeah.
terms of what this just the tone of this conversation. Um, so interesting. I love this.
I love Dan Siegel's model of the brain too. I'm glad you mentioned that. And what we're talking about is that when flip the lid is the prefrontal cortex that's not engaged, and sort of we're making a fist of hugging the amygdala, which is the alarm that's going off. And so what we're doing in these moments, one breath for me, one breath for you, is we are lending our prefrontal cortex. But if we don't have our prefrontal cortex engaged, we're not hugging and it's flip the lid, then it's actually probably adding to the fire. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Whew. What's C, Elizabeth?
C is when you've gotten curious and when your brain is ready, you can lean in with connection and collaboration. And this is slow though. Sometimes, definitely the connection piece can be there, but and the tool here is listen and validate.
Say it again, Elizabeth.
Listen and validate. Listen to understand your child's experience, acknowledge and validate their feelings. And it's not, and we want to be careful too. We don't want to say like, you're mad. We want to say, I notice. I notice that your head's down. How are you? They might not be, I don't usually like to ask questions, even like, how are you feeling? Or sometimes it depends on your child. You can say, how can I support you right now? But oftentimes they don't know. And
Yeah.
so they might spew out something like a bark, a bad word that might trigger the situation even more. So just take your voice slow, low, get down to their level and just listen and
Yeah.
just be there, hold them and maybe actually hold them or just hold the space energetically. I have one son that no way could I touch and hold, and oftentimes not even be in the same room, and one that's, I could tell very much wanted to be deep pressure on the shoulders and not go anywhere. That I'm not, your big emotions are not repelling and you don't have to have any shame around them. I'm here holding the space for you.
Yeah. What do you say to parents who indicate to you that those emotions take too long to process, that they're really uncomfortable with that? Like, what's the teaching around like taking too long?
I think that, like, I mean, first of all, there's a bigger picture here in our culture that, I mean, how many times have you heard people say, like, I'm sorry when they're crying? Or like, and apologize for tears and emotions. So I think that there's a bigger picture conversation about understanding emotions and also deeply feeling people and highly sensitive person neurotype and the collective of just how we are pushing away emotions and thinking they need to move faster than, same thing like we could go back to the swimming analogy. These are skills that we're building. Kids are born with all the feels and not the skills to cope in a lot of ways. And so we're trying to, you know, like make that gap not so big so that they have the coping skills. And as their brain develops, they will. Maturation is our friend. Um, but I think it's a bigger picture conversation about not being so worried about emotions and actually like realizing that this is a stress response. And if it comes out this way, that's okay. It's a release. And somatically, that's what needs to happen. But if we shut it down and we make it go like shame the child for having emotions forever long, they need to have these emotions, then it's going to stay in the body and it's going to come out in different ways. So it's similar to the swimming analogy. You would never like get upset at a child for taking longer to learn how to swim. like, oh my gosh, you're going to lose dinner for like not doing the lap as fast as you, or, for needing that paddle, what do they call on the
The
arms?
floaties.
The floaties. Yeah. I mean, we would never shame a child for that or like expect it to go faster than it needs to go. And that's, where we have to think about our own feelings of comfort when there's big emotions around, which is a big conversation.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, balance that, contrast that perhaps with this notion. Well, we can call it gentle parenting if we want to, but this modern notion of like, we have to dig down and really understand what's going on. You can tell how I feel about this. Where's just define a balance for us here, or like how do you think about that? Because I hear you, like, yes, emotion absolutely is a normal part of being human. Emotions are best expressed and not repressed.
Hmm.
And then there's like a over intellectualization, perhaps, or an overindulgence that actually perpetuates and creates resistance for kids sometimes, is what I find. But I want to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I want to hear more about your thoughts on that. I think that what we want to do is build skills. And so that's also part of the tool three, is the connect and collaborate. So after you've validated and listened, then you can problem solve. Probably not in that moment or even, maybe not even right then, but problem solve to figure out that's where you can be a detective again, of what was going on and what we could do differently in the future. And that's where you're then building the skills so that you can cope with the emotions and the feelings.
Mhm.
So it's not about just I mean, it's uncomfortable to have big emotions like that. And sometimes it's not helpful to navigate situations when, I mean, you cannot, when your brain is flipped like that, you can't navigate situations. You're not aware of what's going on, the thoughts of others, how it affects other people in the situations or the social situation. And so it can be really maladaptive in various situations. So that's why not in these big moments of dysregulation and brain flipped prefrontal brain out of alignment, then we are building the skills so that then we can problem solve and work on flexible thinking and being able to have these coping skills so that they can then handle situations more effectively.
Yeah. Connecting in the moment, collaborating, wait until the moment has passed and we're in a learning state is what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think you're right. The question was coming from like this, like, okay, and immediately I want this to have been a learning experience. No,
Not in the moment or not
not.
even really right afterwards, but there's definitely room for collaboration. And I think that it's doing a disservice to not do that for our kids because we can model the learning and the collaboration and the problem solving, and then we can also talk to them about it too. Because oftentimes our kids with big emotions, they also have a lot of shame around the big emotions. So then we support them in building the skills to be able to navigate the situations with more ease. And that comes with a lot of like proactive sensory and movement. I mean, that's not getting into the big emotion situation. So that's another conversation that we can have.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, getting comfortable with our own big emotions, allowing space for those, preemptively taking care of all that. Those are all kind of long term.
Yeah,
um,
and building the toolbox for regulation. And that's,
yeah,
a lot of that's very important. And we can't that's a very important conversation and a very important part of parenting and supporting our learners, but it's not in the situation
yeah,
in
yeah,
our,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so in the moment, we're getting real curious.
Hmm.
We're pausing. We're
So yes,
taking.
assess, that's the curiosity, that's the A, and do that by pausing and getting curious. And then B is balancing the brain, both your brain, and then figuring out if there's something that you can do, whether it's a cheese stick or deep pressure or what, but it's one breath for you, one breath for me, and then connection
Love it.
and collaboration. And that's through listening and validation as a tool.
I love it. Elizabeth Sautter, if people want to learn more about you and your work and all the wonderful things you do, what do they do?
They can go to my website, elizabethsautter.com. That's where most things are. The link to my book and course and community that we have for parents of neurodivergent kids is all there. And yeah, I'm on social media as well, but you can find that also on my website.
Fantastic. We will link to that in the show notes. And thank you. This was a treat.
It was such a treat. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.